Today on Let Them Talk TV, we're going to talk about native speakerism, and this is discrimination against non-native speakers or preference given to someone who is a native speaker of English. And if you're a non-native speaker of English, then this could affect you, so stay tuned. Recently, this was brought to my attention because there seems to be a worrying trend on YouTube where successful non-native teachers of English have been targeted by less successful channels run by native teachers who post videos where they find the tiniest mistake that the non-native teacher makes and then they mock them for it. Really nasty stuff like, no, I don't care how many millions of subscribers you have. Your pronunciation is wrong. It's pronounced croissant in English, not croissant. You sound like a foreigner and your grammar is wrong. I'm a native speaker, you're not, therefore I'm definitely right in it. They proclaim their outrage with all the fervour of a North Korean news anchor after US army manoeuvres in the DMZ. And somehow, while other forms of prejudice are now considered unacceptable, native speakerism seems to persist. And that's why I wanted to discuss it today and also share with you some of my own experiences. Yes, I have a tale to tell, some deep, dark secrets. So let's talk about it, and I'll return to those scary YouTubers later. So let's go back in time to the late 1980s. I was a young graduate with a dodgy haircut and no English language teaching experience, fed up with my mind-numbingly boring job I was doing in London. So one fine morning, almost on a whim, I hopped on to a flight to Madrid. And on my very first day in the Spanish capital, I was strolling through the centre of town when I stumbled upon a language school. I went in and I asked for a job. And much to my surprise, they said yes. By the way, I talk more about my experiences as an English language teacher in this video here. But just to give you an idea of how wacky things were back then, the director of studies who interviewed me looked at my CV and said, I see your star sign is Cancer. That's good. Cancers do really well at this school. You're hired. That's absolutely true, by the way. And my experience, or rather lack of it, played no part in his decision. His preference for teachers born under the right sign of the zodiac was absurd mumbo-jumbo, but I didn't care. I had a job. A few days later, I was given their textbook and thrown into a classroom with a dozen Spanish students eager to be instructed in the language of Shakespeare, waiting for me inside. Poor bastards. To say that I was wholly unprepared would be an understatement. I knew nothing about English grammar. I knew what a verb was, I knew what an adjective was, but that's about it, honestly. I knew nothing about teaching. Nothing. Zilch, zippo, nada. But I was young and full of piss and vinegar, and I thought that because English was my native tongue, I could get away with it. Sadly, I was wrong. And to use a technical term, I was a teacher. Now, why am I confessing this to you today? And what has this all got to do with native speakerism? During my time in Spain, I met some Spanish teachers of English who were great, so knowledgeable, so talented, great educators and virtuoso performers in the classroom. In short, 100 billion times better than I was back then. Hopefully I've improved a bit since then. but at the time I was terrible. And yet they were, for the most part, shunned by the language schools. When offering private lessons, they were paid less than native speakers, or rather, a native teacher, no matter how lousy, could command higher rates than they could. I was okay. I was a native speaker, but at the same time, I was aware of the injustice, and it did make me feel uncomfortable. Now, let's skip ahead because my stint in Spain came to an end after 2 years. I went back to London and I never thought I would teach English again. And instead, I worked in the IT industry for many years. And to cut a long story short, about 15 years ago, I found myself running a language school in Paris. Yes, indeed. And here I am. Voila, the director of studies. I call the shots. I employ the teachers. I can make the right decisions. However, now I do see it a bit from the other side. I do see things a bit differently. Now, don't worry, I don't prioritize Sagittarians over Libras, and I don't care if a teacher is English or French or Chinese or Turkish, as long as they are good teachers and they know the language. But here is the problem that a lot of language schools face. The pressure to give the jobs to native teachers mostly comes from the students. So when someone contacts us to inquire about English lessons, one of the first questions they usually ask is whether the teacher is a native speaker or not. And even if they're not overtly prejudiced, if you say no, they often go elsewhere. And it's not always like that, but it happens often enough. And what about this? What would you do in this situation? A company wants your language school to give English lessons to its employees. It's a lucrative contract, a lot of money, one that can make or break your struggling language school. And then the head of the company insists that the teachers you provide are native English speakers. What do you do? What do you say? Would you walk away? It's clear what's right and what's wrong from a moral standpoint, but it's difficult for a business owner struggling to make the business work, struggling to put food on the table for their family. All I'm saying is that we are often too quick to judge. People are complex and they have competing principles, and even good people can make morally questionable decisions. And you've got to do what's right ethically, but you also have a responsibility to your business and your family. And just the pressure to make a living and to pay the rent and all the bills is there all the time. Have I ever been native speakerist? Well, I have employed non-native teachers, but at the same time, when I've had two candidates who were equally good, and one was a native speaker and one a non-native speaker, perhaps I've erred on the side of caution. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Although I'm a native English teacher, I've explained my own situation, but what I have never felt is any animosity towards non-native English teachers. Unfortunately, this is not the case for everyone in our profession. There is a small but vociferous minority of native English teachers who resent the competition from non-natives. I've seen it right from the very start of my teaching career, and these people cannot stand the fact that someone who doesn't have English as a first language is thriving in their domain. Even outside the world of teaching, you'll find a small number of people who don't like it when they meet a non-native speaker who knows English better than they do. They don't like it. They are jealous of their success and will take every opportunity to put them down. Why is it that some people don't like other people doing well? This all brings me back to those scary YouTubers trying to grow their channels by finding faults of non-native teachers. And of course, it's all born out of a burning jealousy. These haters can't stand it when a non-native teacher is more successful than they are. So they set upon the smallest error to shame them and belittle their achievements. And of course, it'll backfire in the end because nobody wants to be associated with the toxic channel of a hater. And I'm not going to show any clips of these videos. All they want is the air of publicity, which I refuse. As they say, if you want attention, then start a fight. So finally, let me just say this. I recently read 10 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson, an excellent book, but I did notice on one page a grammatical error. Yes, that's right. There was a who that should have been a whom. Certainly would have been more appropriate in the register that Peterson was writing in. Okay then, does that make me a better writer than Jordan Peterson? Does that make me more eloquent than he is? Well, I wish it did, but alas, no. And highlighting the mistakes of others doesn't make you a better teacher than they are. Everybody makes mistakes. I've made loads of them. I'm sure there are even grammar mistakes in this video. And I'm sure somebody's going to point them out in the comments. Native speakers make mistakes. And of course, even fluent non-native speakers with a C2 level will make mistakes. It's inevitable. And it's a cheap shot to point these out. Good teachers teach. Bad teachers disparage their colleagues in public. If you're a non-native teacher of English, I just want to say that I'm proud of you. All the negativity you have to put up with doesn't make it easy. Just ignore the trolls and keep on keeping on. You're doing a great job. And now I'd really like to hear from you. If you're learning English, do you insist that the teacher is a native speaker? If you're a non-native English teacher, what is your experience of native speakerism? Let us know in the comments. Have a great day and see you next time. Bye.